The Bible Study Podcast, episode 337. Today, the Bible Study Podcast continues the study of John with chapter 12. Welcome to the Bible Study Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Christensen. You may recall that just recently we studied the raising of Lazarus and that whole event. This story today continues on that story with the reaction of Mary and Martha. We're reading John 12, verse 1. 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany where Lazarus lived, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. Here a dinner was given in Jesus' honor. Martha served, while Lazarus was among those reclining at table with him. Then Mary took out a pint of pure nard, an expensive perfume. She poured it on Jesus' feet and wiped his feet with her hair, and the house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. But one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, who was later to betray him, objected. Why wasn't this perfume sold and the money given to the poor? It was worth a year's wages. He did not say this because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. As keeper of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put into it. Leave her alone, Jesus replied. It was intended that she should save this perfume for the day of my burial. You will always have the poor among you, but you will not always have me. Meanwhile, a large crowd of Jews found out that Jesus was there and came, not only because of him, but also to see Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. So the chief priests made a plan to kill Lazarus as well, for on account of him many of the Jews were going over to Jesus and believing in him. I love the way that story starts 6 days before the Passover, and so we're getting really close. We're just about at Palm Sunday. In fact, that's going to be the very next story we're going to get to. Jesus came to Bethany where Lazarus lived. Now, that seems like a very normal sentence, except for the fact that not that many days before this, Lazarus wasn't alive. And that really is what this whole story revolves around, is that Lazarus lives. And so the people are clamoring to see Jesus. The people are clamoring to see Lazarus. Mary and Martha, in their own way, are each giving thanks to Jesus for what he did. Martha's through service, because that's what Martha does. And we have the other story of Mary and Martha. While Martha serves and Mary listens, Martha asks Jesus to scold her sister. Why can't she help? Martha serves, and so she does. And Mary takes this expensive perfume and pours it on Jesus' feet. It is extravagant. It is a waste, according to Judas Iscariot, who John tells us had other motivations. But it is extravagant love. It is extravagant praise. It is extravagant thanks. She's taken a year's wages and poured it at Jesus' feet because of what Jesus has done. Jesus has restored her brother. The brother that she loved is now back with her. And this amount of stuff that she pours out at Jesus' feet is nothing compared to that. The value of this perfume is nothing compared to how she feels about Jesus right now. And Jesus again says, you won't always have me. And at this point, Good Friday is less than a week away. Jesus has been pointing his face to Jerusalem for some time now, and his ministry here is almost over. And it's interesting to note that even Lazarus' presence threatens his life because Lazarus lives. Continuing on in verse 12, the next day the great crowd had come for the festival, heard that Jesus was on his way to Jerusalem. They took palm branches and went out to meet him, shouting, Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is the King of Israel. Jesus found a young donkey and sat on it, as it is written, Do not be afraid, daughter Zion. See, your king is coming, seated on a donkey's colt. At first his disciples did not understand all this. Only after Jesus was glorified did they realize that these things had been written about him, and that these things had been done to him. Now the crowd that was with him when he called Lazarus from the tomb and raised him from the dead continued to spread the word. Many people, because they had heard that he had performed this sign, went out to meet him. So the Pharisees said to one another, See, this is getting us nowhere. Look how the whole world has gone after him. And so again, we see that Palm Sunday happens because Lazarus lives. And people come out and they greet Jesus, and they greet him because of what they have heard of him, and they greet him as the coming king. And the Pharisees, and it's driving the Pharisees crazy because they're afraid they're going to lose everything if this Jesus is trying to become a king. Now, this Jesus is not trying to become a king, and we're going to see that in a bit. But it's not that the crowds wouldn't have made him king at this moment. But that is not why he came to Jerusalem. And that is not what he's come for. And so Jesus continues on in verse 20. Now there were some among the Greeks who went up to worship at the festival. They came to Philip, who was from Bethsaida in Galilee, with a request. Sir, they said, we would like to see Jesus. Philip went to tell Andrew. Andrew and Philip in turn told Jesus. Jesus replied, the hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. Very truly I tell you, unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds. Anyone who loves their life will lose it, while anyone who hates their life in this world will keep it for eternal life. Whoever serves me must follow me, and where I am, my servant also will be. My Father will honor the one who serves me. Now my soul is troubled, and what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour? No, it was for this very reason I came to this hour. Father, glorify your name. Then a voice came from heaven, I have glorified it, and I will glorify it again. The crowd that was there and heard it said it had thundered. Others said an angel had spoken to him. Jesus said, this voice was for your benefit, not mine. Now is the time for judgment on this world. Now the prince of this world will be driven out. And I, when I am lifted up from the earth, will draw all people to myself. He said this to show the kind of death he was going to die. The crowd spoke up, we have heard from the law that the Messiah will remain forever. So how can you say the Son of Man must be lifted up? Who is the Son of Man? Then Jesus told them, you are going to have the light just a little while longer. Walk while you have the light, before darkness overtakes you. Whoever walks in the dark does not know where they are going. Believe in the light while you have the light, so that you may become children of the light. When he had finished speaking, Jesus left and hid himself from them. This story starts with an odd thought, which is some people want to see Jesus. Some people who are Greeks, who were there, who have come up to worship at the festival. And they go to see Jesus, and Jesus instead gives them this cryptic answer that it's time for the Son of Man to be glorified, and he's going to somehow be lifted up, and somehow like a seed be planted, that unless he loses his life, he can't bear much fruit. The seed analogy makes sense. It isn't until you take the seed and put it into the ground that it produces, that it multiplies, that it produces more fruit than just one seed. And so Jesus is saying, like the seed, he also has to be put in the ground. He also has to die. He also has to be lifted up, and we now know on the cross, so that what the Father sent him to do can happen, so that the Father's name will be glorified. And this is the day he has been telling the disciples about now for several chapters here in the Gospel of John. And that day is almost here. You're going to have the light just a little while longer, he tells them. Believe in the light while you have it, that you may become children of light. As Jesus looks at what he is about to do, he is doing it because whose he is. He is doing it because he is his Father's Son. He is doing it because doing the will of the Father is more important to him even than his life. And all he asks is that we live the same way. With that, we're going to end this episode of the Bible Study Podcast. If you have any questions, feel free to send an email to host@thebiblestudypodcast.com or leave a comment on this episode at thebiblestudypodcast.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at Chris2X. And as always, thanks so much for listening.
Is life feeling chaotic? I get it. I'm Rachel Wojo, host of the Untangling Life podcast. Don't miss the passionate encouragement and faith-based resources you need to help you clear your head and calm your heart. As Shell says, it feels like Rachel always knows what I need to hear. She keeps it real and is so humble. Her podcast is just the cherry on top. Enjoy Untangling Life with Rachel Wojo on lifeaudio.com or your favorite podcast app now.